Greetings and God bless. I just wanted to share my 2 cents about being a lifelong pedestrian. I grew up in New York. I never learned how to drive. And so um, I walk. And so I've lived in a lot of different places that, has supposedly a high walkability score. But when you take into account that there's the sidewalks aren't maintained during wintertime, so you're walking through a foot of snow, which then becomes ice for the next several months. Walkability it becomes zero because every foot you have to get these kind of ice cleats. They're called yak tracks or whatever. I mean, and some like yak tracks, I knew people who kept on spraining their ankle on them. So I think they're real ice cleat type of ones, and I don't think they have a formal name, but or maybe they do. But my point is that just because on a map it looks like you're close to the restaurant or the library or whatever, um, when nobody maintains the sidewalks, uh, they're hazardous basically, and it's like a hostile. It's most places, in my experience, are have a hostile um, treatment of pedestrians. And so so that's, cold weather places. So basically nobody's taking care of their sidewalks. So for months you're walking in 2 feet of snow, and most of the people are somewhere else, or most of the people that are in charge are hired, property managers who couldn't care less, and the city could care less because the city is making money off of the property taxes and whatever bribes these big international property real estate investor speculators are doing, given to the mayor or whatever. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's clear nobody's protecting pedestrians' safety. At least in my experience of living in like South Dakota or Montana or Iowa or Virginia. And for instance, when I was in Virginia, uh, there would be a huge downpour, and the sidewalk it was like, I don't know, 7 inches of rain or something like that. So, and I think it was just, I don't know if it was the improper sidewalk build or lack of drainage or something like that. But, I was new to the area, and, I had to walk for like a block or two because I just was stranded in this one area. And I didn't know I'd be in a flood, a swamp, when I was in Norfolk. So, yeah, a lot of cities, it's weird because everybody is this psychotic environmentalist who are like, even though they drive, they think you shouldn't drive. Even though they have a gas range, they think you shouldn't have a gas range. Even though they have children and grandchildren and want more, you shouldn't have children or grandchildren. It's really psychotic. It's this crazy double standard. So anyway, uh, all these psychos are in charge, and they're like, yeah, everybody should walk except for me. I mean, I should have a car because I'm making these decisions. So I'm the smart person, and all these dumb jerks that shouldn't be alive, well, they should be walking. But the thing is, when I'm here in Denver, and the bus stops, like homeless people live in the bus stops. The bus stops are covered in trash. It's disgusting. And there's people like living in the bus stop. So you're like, and, it's been very stressful for me, just even trying to walk on the sidewalk, because every 10 feet there's some just like incredibly neglected, horror kind of homeless person that you see in there. Or they're not even necessarily homeless people. They're, I don't know, doped up on this concentrate. So I never heard about this. I never really knew, but there's, so pot was made legal, I guess 2012 or something like that in Colorado. Colorado became a drug destination, and what comes along with drugs? Human trafficking. So it is my observation that people come to Colorado to get wasted and to get prostitutes. I'm thinking, and the city is very proud. I think the city really likes that it's kind of the Las Vegas of this part of the country, and but you see, really, it's like a third world country. The how messed up. Like I've lived in New York. I grew up in New York. I saw terrible homelessness there and heard about it. And I lived in San Francisco, and in the Tenderloin, you'd see terrible homelessness and prostitution and stuff. But um, there's something. I don't know if it's the 5,000 feet altitude, if that's making people worse. I don't know if it's something in the water. I know that there's ground level ozone from the pollution that's really hard on people's health. So maybe it's combined. When you're at high altitude, you have less oxygen, and then when you're experiencing pollution, you have less oxygen, so you can't really think. Your organs aren't functioning as much, and maybe it's because of fentanyl being here. Like there was like a fentanyl. Somebody was delivered fentanyl here, and the cops found her, and they dropped charges. Like she had millions of dollars of fentanyl, but they dropped charges. And who knows where this fentanyl? And I think she brought cocaine. Where's it gonna go? Oh, it's gonna go into the city here. Like the city is making money off of. I can only assume that it's making money off of these severely mentally ill, addicted, homeless people, uh, and non-homeless people. Because when I'm riding the bus, at any moment there's a fight that's going to break out. Whether it's two white people, whether it's two black people, where it's just man or woman. People have no sense of self-preservation. That's what I notice here. And like two strangers are going to have a fight. And I grew up in New York during the 70s and 80s, and you did your best to avoid confrontation, and because you just don't know if somebody's on their last nerve. And here in Colorado, they're just like, whatever, this is a video game. This isn't reality. And and I guess everybody's on drugs or something. I don't know. So, and the locals are like, yeah, that's how it is. And I've talked to Christians, and they have like this wall comes down when I talk about how horrible the homeless seem here, and everybody's just blaming the homeless people. Now, uh, again, people need to realize that homelessness and like terrorizing your locals makes the city money, because the locals are like, yeah, we got to do something about the homelessness. So the city is creating a problem by not taking care, not giving these psychiatric patients, these addicts, what they need. And what they need is some type of support, some type of recovery program, and at least give them some shoes, give them some belts to wear. Like so many men are walking around holding their weight, the waist of their pants up. So many men I've seen with no shoes, and in like 0 degree weather. Um, so many men like don't have like I've seen their butts. Like I don't know. I've been here maybe 8-9 months. I've seen like 5 different homeless men's butts hanging out of their pants, and you know men are just letting their pants fall down to the ground, and I think they're just so out of it. And it's just, this is traumatic. This is horror. And so I think some cities enjoy terrorizing their locals, and tourists are already overwhelmed, and they're just like, wow, that's weird. And so tourists just assume, oh, this is just a one-time thing. But being that I've been here, this is something I've seen day in, day out. So it's clear Denver doesn't care, and it's anarchy. And you rarely ever see police. When you're downtown, there are these people with these like black and blue shirts, or white and blue, or white and black and white and these different, they kind of, rent a cop kind of thing, that don't do anything. They're just walking back and forth. And people are doing all sorts of shrieking, screaming, twitching. And I don't know if this is some kind of undiagnosed like Lyme co-infection, because there's neurological symptoms that occur. But of course, medicine doesn't care. Medicine doesn't, it's obstructing people's access to what is an infectious disease like Lyme disease that becomes neurologic. Like West Nile is something that happens here, and West Nile can result in neurologic symptoms. But the doctors here won't tell you this, especially somebody who's working with homeless populations, Medicare. Like these doctors are not there to prescribe help. If my experience. So it's just a mess that is thrown at law-abiding pedestrians who are foolish enough to walk down, let's say, the 16th Street Mall, or take that 16th Street Mall bus with your children. Like, I do not recommend Denver for children. The city of Denver, I do not recommend it. I do not recommend taking the bus, the public bus in Denver. And so, this is just an example of these hypocritical cities with this double standard, where they do not make taking the when these two other people were talking, and I just happened to be a convenient punching bag for this guy, and I had no idea who was going to punch me. But this is the Denver likes it this way, because they're not doing anything about it. The locals aren't doing anything about it, and there's just enough tourism. This just people are just rustling up interest for people to visit here. And in the past, I think Denver had like it's. I thought it was supposed to be a world-class city, but it is not. And yeah, and the thing that's really strange is cities are pushing this climate change, this environmentalist agenda, but they don't make the sidewalks safe to walk. Like, if they want you to walk, you can't have the streets full of crazy, insane, addicted, aggressive homeless people. If you want people to take the bus, you can't have violent people on the bus. You need to have somebody like a police officer or something dealing with these aggressive, dangerous people. And another thing about Denver is everybody wants to ride those scooters, the Lime and Lyft scooters. They seem to want to ride as fast as possible into crowds. So that's into crowds where there's just a little, like 2 feet of clearance. So you're going to be dealing with 5 people trying to go as fast as possible, or somebody on their e-bike going as fast as possible down the bit of the sidewalk, because they're doing construction, so they only leave this tiny little bit of space. So everybody on their scooter and everybody on their e-bike or on the regular bike, they're like, get out of my way. Even though you're on the sidewalk, you have the right of way. But there's this entitled cyclist or scooter mentality. They're like, the scooter people are like, well, I paid for this, so I get to go as fast as possible on the sidewalk, even though it says on the scooter, do not use on the sidewalk. But the city doesn't care. Denver doesn't care. Like, what's so weird is how cities won't protect their pedestrians by finding places that won't shovel the snow, for instance. Like, if a city wants to make money, like Montana or South Dakota, like, they need to shovel the snow. They need to de-ice the sidewalk. And I'm sorry, you crazy environmentalists who are like, don't put salt on the sidewalk, it hurts the fish or something like that. Like, am I supposed to kill myself because you're worried about fish in the ocean? And of course, the environmentalists are like, yeah, you should die because the fish matter more than you. Well, to hell with you, environmentalists who think that my safety is irrelevant, or that the safety of actual pedestrians is irrelevant. And that's the thing about these environmentalists. They're not practical. They're like, to hell with the people who are really going to be walking. But they want to live in this fantasy. They want to read on a piece of paper, no salt used. And how many deaths? Oh, 100 people, 100 pedestrians died because that city won't use salt. So they have to, have brain damage and become disabled because nobody's taking care of the sidewalks and they won't use salt. So, anyways, cities can make money off of finding people who are violating the local, you know, ordination or whatever it's called. Like, you're supposed to shovel the sidewalk by 9 a.m. And so many places in Montana and South Dakota don't do that. And property management companies are like, we don't have to do that. We don't have to follow the law because we're so much better. But then those same cities will do, or those same states will like ticket people for parking or something like that. Like there'll be like this no harm kind of ticketing. Um, so yeah, I don't believe in climate change. I just like to walk. I used to be an environmentalist. I used to think humans are a cancer on the planet. I used to apologize, like feel like I shouldn't be on this planet. I'm a cancer on the planet. But now I realize that God intended me to be here. God made this world for me to be in, and I don't have to apologize for my existence. And I have a right to walk on the sidewalk. I have a right to cross at the light when it's my light, but everybody's so entitled and psychotic, and they have no impulse control. They just want to run with people. Then they don't want to, then they won't run you over. But they think that they can bully. Like that's the mentality now with cars, is they think they can bully you on when you're trying to cross. When you're trying to cross at your light on the zebra stripe thing. And that's what I noticed with people on scooters, the Lime and the lift scooters, and people on e-bikes, and people who bicycle on the sidewalk. Is they also feel like you are in their way, but you're in. Like they need to apologize. They need to give you right of way. But folks, I suspect a lot of people who are riding bikes and e-bikes and scooters, I think they must have lost their license, and so they're just like, oh, I'm just going to do my same reckless, dangerous behavior on a scooter, on an e-bike, on a bicycle, on the sidewalk, and to hell with the pedestrians. And places like the city of Denver are like, yeah, kill our pedestrians, terrorize our pedestrians. We like that. And I do think when cities do not protect their pedestrians, they like it. I think they get something out of the suffering of their local pedestrians when your pedestrian is being terrorized by these reckless drivers on the sidewalk with the scooters, and these kind of scary homeless people. It's like every several feet you're going to see some pathos. Anyways, my point is that you look up the walkability score and it says, oh, it's a paradise. No, no, it's not a paradise when there's negligent property managers that don't take care of the snow, or they don't take care of whatever's going to cause flooding. So you're in, like ankle deep in a bog when there's rain. And a place isn't walkability when there's just aggressive homeless people or scary homeless people. And there's like six. Like that's something that I excuse me, I had to hold on to the like building because the wind was so powerful. So you want to look into that as well as like, so are there crazy people riding bikes as fast as possible, including the police? Like when I was in South Dakota, like these two cops on bikes were like nearly going to crash into me, and it's just because they're being careless and they're just assuming that I'm supposed to anticipate them being there, and I didn't. I mean, so yeah, like sidewalks are not safe, even if on a map it looks like there's a sidewalk. Uh, what I'm realizing is, when I was in South Dakota, I was in Norfolk, well, actually, I would say Norfolk. I didn't have a lot. I didn't have to deal with a lot of people on those scooters or bicyclists, but drivers were they were just like, and it was like during and after the riots, so people were like, "You should die, Whitey," "Get out of my way, Whitey," And I've had this before, where it's like, if that black person could kill me, they would. And and I know I have a former black friend who thinks that's fine, and that's I should accept that and die if some black person gets to kill me. I disagree. And anyways, so cities are trying to push this psycho environmentalist agenda while still having everybody have be dependent on cars because they're not adjusting the how there's stores, like stores aren't allowed to be near homes, so those same insane people that are not allowing stores to be nearby, they're forcing people to have to drive 50 miles to some place or 20 miles. And and yet these same psycho people, the people who are making the decisions and the people driving in a car, they're like, yeah, the environment, we're killing the environment, but not me. I mean, like what needs to change is you have to have your amenities close by. You got to have your library and your grocery store and your post office. You need to have it within like a 20-minute walking radius. But all these places are, I guess they're thinking Amazon's gonna make sure, replace that. So everybody just has to be, watching porn all day at home and have Amazon deliver everything. I'm thinking maybe what the plan is. Um, but folks, you can't be an environmentalist and drive a car. You can't call yourself an environmentalist if you're and you take planes and you're traveling with impunity and you're having kids and you're doing this and that. Why? Because you don't really believe that there's a lack. You believe that subconsciously everything's fine, but you're virtue signaling that the environment is suffering. Now, of course, we don't want pollution. I don't like people throwing, trash on the street. I don't like people pouring poison into the sewer. I think that's terrible. And I think we should, find ways. Like I've lived in places where they would have like once a year, like some type of drive where you deliver your old paint and your old chemicals and stuff like that. Like things are not that complicated, and we don't have to lock down everybody into 20-minute cities where everybody's just hooked on porn and waiting for Amazon to deliver. Like I don't think that's insane, and it's unacceptable, and it isn't what God planned for us. So anyways, I think cities need to take care of their sidewalks, uphold like uphold the ordinances or whatever it's called when you shovel your sidewalks, because and if and what the city needs to do is fine people for not shoveling their sidewalk. Cities need to fine people for riding on the sidewalk. And the thing is, there's just like reckless areas and reckless people. And like I don't mind if this, like there's a lot of big sidewalks in Denver, and for some reason, though, people aren't riding on the 15th Street side. They're not riding on the 17th Street side. They want to ride where everybody else is walking. And I think it's just some sort of like egotistical gratification, because they'll actually go faster on these empty sidewalks. Like it's free and clear. But they're going where it's most congested, where they just can't. There's no room. And so many too, like 5 people on a scooter, like on 5 different scooters. So yeah, so it's anarchy. Like these so-called virtue signaling cities are bringing illegal immigrants and spending thousands of dollars on, like, I hear that they brought 7,000 illegals in and spent $30,000 on each of the 7,000 illegals. And the city of Denver is expecting the residents to pay them back. So Denver did this without asking people. And then Denver's going to ask people to pay them back, to pay the city back for making such a good life, $30,000 per 7,000 people in like 6 months. Now, I think Denver could have actually taken care of their American born and bred homeless people and spent $30,000 for 7,000 homeless people. I think that would make such a big difference for this city. But no, no, cities don't want to do that. They want to do some crazy stuff. And like, what, let's say you've entered, you're basically a criminal that's entered in a country, and then a country spends $30,000 on you. Like, what are you gonna like? Are you gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna really work hard? No, you're like, yeah, I'm a criminal and I get paid. Crime pays. And that's what these illegals are probably learning. Like, I knew somebody in Montana who was a social worker, and she said that they brought people, the city I was in, brought people from the Congo. These weren't refugees. They were just random people from the Congo. And the city bought them a house, and it was multiple families. Like, so bought houses and bought trucks. Everything was paid off. And so these people from the Congo were like, oh, I guess this is what America does to all of its citizens. Like, all of the city, the country buys everybody a home and everybody a car, pays it off, and like, uh, it was just crazy. Like, because in that particular city, there was like a less than 1% vacancy rate. There's a lot of poverty there, like working people were poor. And yeah, this was Montana. Like, so I would have thought, like, more Republican, conservative-ish cities would have some common sense or have some say. And what I discovered when I moved to Montana, at the city, it was Missoula, is that it was totally taken over by liberals, and they were totally like into censoring me. And I was still like a new age liberal at the time, but I was too much of a true liberal. I wasn't a far left Marxist totalitarian. And that's what, that's what's going on, in like, Missoula, Montana. And in amongst, like there's been this like strategic infiltration of conservative places like South Dakota. I thought I was going to be in like conservative, ness, but schools and the library, like everybody had, everybody was like your typical alphabet kind of a person. And they were, and there's this weird correspondence of being an alphabet person and being into the masks, into the suffocation, and into the pokes. I don't, I don't know. Like, I, is it like masochism? Is it sadism? I don't know. I never really thought about that, but yeah, that was a surprise and a disappointment. So yeah, when a city looks like it's walkable, and beware of people, especially realtors or whoever's hyping the city, when they say, yeah, it's walkable. Like, these people never walk. There's very few people. Like, basically this video is for other confirmed pedestrians who are looking for a safer place to be as our country collapses, as humanity is being destroyed by these globalists. Like, I can't be the only pedestrian who's trying to figure this out. I mean, I think a lot of people are living in their cars, and they're, they're in Alaska, or, remote locations in Arizona or something like that. But for those of us who don't know how to drive, that's what I'm talking about or for. So don't believe it when somebody who always drives a car says it's walkable, because they don't know what's going on. So you wanna know, like, how are the sidewalks in the winter? Do people shovel the sidewalks or salt the sidewalks? Is it icy for 6 months out of the year? How is the homelessness? Is there crazy addiction, alcoholism going on, and are they just like what I have heard is that there's like these pimps that bring people from the reservation. That's what happened I think in South Dakota when I was in Rapid City. Is the pimps would bring I don't know, 10 Native people who are all wasted and, just a wreck. And so then they would corner you at the crosswalk, when the cars are passing, so you couldn't, so you're trapped. And that happened to me multiple times. I was demands, like people made demands of reparations. Women asked me for reparations. I'm like, I'm just trying to do my laundry. I'm just trying to go to the grocery store. I'm on my feet. Like, don't ask me for reparations. Like this is just disgusting. And there would be no cops. Like the police department was like 3 blocks away. Never I saw a cop maybe once, maybe twice. Shame on these cities. And So yeah, that was South Dakota, and there's like this Marxist movement called Land Back, and I met Native people who are like, yeah, this is all my land, this is all my, and I'm like, this isn't your land, like in my head, because somebody else is paying those property taxes, somebody else is paying that mortgage or that rent. It is not you, but there's this delusion, and I think maybe Marxists, like globalist Marxists, must be putting ideas into these folks' heads, or maybe this is just something they've always believed. So my point is that when something looks good on a map and the walkability score seems good, and realtors are like, yeah, it's walkable, or tourists are like, yeah, it's walkable. Like everybody's pretty much a driver, and so walking in reality, in all 4 seasons or whatever is going on. Like when I was in Iowa, Cedar Rapids, they had what's called the Derecho, which is this very terrible storm that took out like 50% of the canopy. So walking there, like it was just torture. Also, South Dakota, Rapid City, South Dakota. Again, there wasn't there was very little shade, and so it was just really horrible. Like I think I got heat stroke, or I don't know. I don't know all of the things that the diagnoses and stuff like that, but it was just very bad for me. Um, so so just because uh, it looks good, the reality is much different. And you can look up temperatures, you can look up walkability scores, but I think another thing that would be great for pedestrians is the you know do people shovel the sidewalks if they get snow? Are sidewalks maintained? Are there is there I mean, I have compassion for homeless people and for messed up people, but lurking on the sidewalk and being scary is not, it's just, or in parks or in bus stops is not right. It's not cool. Um, like, and I don't know what the solution is, but when you're a pedestrian, you want to feel like you can, just do your business, and not be terrorized. And also, um, these like people biking. Like when I was in Portland, Oregon, my first 5 months there, I got crashed into like 5 times. Uh, and I got crashed into from behind. I got crashed into, like when I'm turning a corner, the guy was going to crash into me. I just got crashed into, not terribly fast and hard, but it was just like, what is going on here? And I think like everybody, like in Portland, hypes itself as being a green city, but the thing is, most people who are doing the green thing are riding their bikes like maniacs on the sidewalk. and they think they own, like bicyclists think they own the sidewalk. So there's not a whole lot of pedestrians. Like that's a, because being a pedestrian is hard work. It's a lot harder than being on a bicycle, because you're bearing all of your weight, and the bicycle, it like once you get it rolling, it's bearing your weight. So yeah, like just because a city promotes itself, you know, just because the map is not the territory, just because statistics look good, that's not it's not the reality. Like I would say, in my experience, the best cities I have been in were New York and San Francisco, and maybe even DC. It's been a while since I've been there, but I would say, and Jersey City, because just there's a lot of bustle, there's a lot of activity. And when there's like something I notice here in Denver, and what I noticed in South Dakota, is when there's a festival, somehow all of the homeless people are gone. Like, do they get invited to a pizza party somewhere? Or, I don't know. So, like, if that can happen when the city is having a big tourist event, making money off of people coming there, then they should do that locally. They should figure out whatever system they got working during those festivals and fairs, they need to implement day to day. And honestly, I think if there's such a homeless problem where you have all these people, in the same place day after day, month after month, year after year, then you need to have like a mini homeless shelter there, and have provide medical stuff and beverage, like water and showers and laundry or something like that. Like something has to be done. You can't, like cities cannot just abandon not only the homeless people, but the locals who have to deal with this every day. Like there's money, there's clearly money, and these evil cities are just like, we're going to do what we want to do, and we're going to ignore these glaring, troubling, torturous problems that the locals have to deal with. Because clearly those people, like the trusted agents of the public good, are not dealing with these homeless people. They're all in their gated community and snorting coke and going to prostitutes or something like that, and could care less. They're probably happy because they're more deranged homeless people there are, the more drugs and prostitution can happen. So, anyways, I think that's just an important thing to take into account to the, and I know there's just only a few pedestrians, like confirmed pedestrians out there, because most people do know how to drive, and even though they would like to walk, they're like, I gotta drive because this is too much. It's very hard. It's very hard to be a pedestrian unless you're in New York or San Francisco. And I hear it's bad in San Francisco as well. And something I'm noticing is a lot of there's a lot of broken windows around in Denver, and I'm like, in other cities I've lived, like it's fixed in like a day or maybe a week, but a lot of places aren't repairing. It doesn't seem like a lot of places are repairing these smashed windows. And I'm like, what do they know that we don't know? Because, having boarded up windows, and like it's July 2023. It's not the riots, are a couple of years ago. So I'm wondering if even people who own these properties are not taking care of the broken windows, because they're like, well, it's the end of the world, so why bother? But I think even if it is the end of the world, fix that window, I mean, even if it gets broken, maybe get a different type of window or put a gate on it or something like that. But yeah, I don't think, I mean, unless you want to board up all your windows. But yeah, so that's just something else I'm noticing here in Denver. But you wouldn't think. I mean, so this is my first time being here, and it seems like there's a lot of empty streets. And I'm like, were there a lot more people here in downtown? Because that's the thing. When there's a lot of people, uh, the it just makes the homelessness and the um, overly fast scooter people on the sidewalk. It dilutes it, because the scooter people, even though they can try to aim at 50 people, but like tough luck with that, and they, it's just weird bullying kind of a thing. Um, and I guess that's what abusive cities like Denver are. It's like they're a bully. They're a bully to a single person who wants to be a pedestrian. And I think like a lot of cities discourage it. It's they're so psycho though, because they're all psyched about, they're all like hyping the global warming thing. They hate pedestrians. That's why I find a lot of cities hate pedestrians. Oh, you're a criminal if you're a pedestrian. How dare you walk on the sidewalk? Like for some reason, it's that cities are like this, except for New York. I would say I haven't been to San Francisco in a while, but and I think cities hate pedestrians and try to discourage pedestrians because I think cities are involved in human trafficking and drug trafficking. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking, because why else would you discourage people walking by your stores and walking by your beauty parlors and walking by your theaters? Why would you discourage that? Why would you make it a horrific experience, a terrifying experience to walk on your sidewalks when people like to spend money at the ice cream shop or the pizza parlor? So I think, I don't know if cities are trying to sabotage businesses, maybe it's like this globalist sabotage of cities, because I've heard, so they have all this construction. It's like the worst designed because it's a pedestrian mall and there's a lot of businesses, but they don't give you a whole lot of um, leeway to walk, and they've blocked off sidewalks, so you have to go all the way around this other block to get around. Like whoever did the design for the 16th Street Mall construction in Denver is like an idiot, and did not take pedestrians very much into consideration. And I noticed that a lot lately. Is people who are doing construction are like, to hell with those pedestrians. And yeah, I think those people should get like lawsuits for the injuries that they cause, because they're only giving people like 2 feet, when there's like, a thousand or thousands of people passing through this like 2 feet wide bit of sidewalk. But there was one other thing I was gonna say, but yeah, ultimately, I don't know. I mean, I guess you call the city to ask if they hold people accountable for the snow, shoveling the snow, if they hold people accountable for recklessly driving on the sidewalk. Like, I don't mind if there's a big sidewalk and you've got 5 people on a scooter, even though there's all these bike lanes. I mean, that's the thing. There's bike lanes that those scooters could be on. Um, but I don't care if there's just a big sidewalk. It's just I don't like this bullying abuse. It's like psychological abuse, and it's like physical abuse. Like when you're like bumping into projections, off of a building because you're trying to get out of the way of a reckless scooter person in this tiny little bit of the sidewalk. So, and I don't know if it's just what helps is like looking up statistics about reckless driving, like what insurance companies say about drivers, because I know that Missoula, Montana was the worst or maybe it was the state of Montana, but like it was the worst for like 6 years, 7 years in a row, like had the worst driving record. So that's one thing to take into account is like, how's the driving record there? Like by looking up insurance statistics about drivers. And I would also look up statistics about pedestrian injury and fatality. Like usually they're talking about drivers that harm pedestrians, which is, it's terrible. But what I wonder about is pedestrian injuries on sidewalks by people with scooters or bicyclists or e-bikes. Another thing is when you're a pedestrian and you're walking on the sidewalk, people love to smoke their pot. And I was going to talk about this concentrate. So there's this pot concentrate that's here because Denver legalized pot. So it's like the old school leaf that people were using. But now it's 10 years later and people, that's not strong enough for them anymore. So they do this concentrate. And this concentrate makes people psychotic. And maybe old school pot made people psychotic, but now it's like people are hostile. And I don't know if it, like, so you're hot boxed. People like to smoke their pot in a crowd as you're trying to walk on the sidewalk. They like to do this. They like to smoke their pot on the bus, so you're having to breathe in the pot smoke. People like to vape, and people hotbox you in your own building. And I had this happen to me in Montana, and nobody does anything about it. And if you say anything, people are like, "I've never heard anybody complain. You're full of baloney." So that's another thing when you're a pedestrian is people mess with the air, and they just, and I know I'm sounding like I'm complaining, but this is about anarchy. This is about nobody. Like when I was growing up in New York, people were not riding like, 5 different people on a sidewalk. When I was growing up in New York, people were not smoking pot or vaping cigarettes, in a small space on the bus. When I was growing up, yeah, there were some angry, crazy people on the sidewalk or on the bus, but not like I'm seeing now. Like this is like I this is just, and I think this has maybe to do with the lockdowns, but also there's some greater amount of toxins going on. I don't know if all the drugs get removed from the wastewater, and if everybody's getting like drugs like fentanyl in the wastewater, because from what I understand about modern water, it's basically sewage that's treated, so we're drinking sewage that's been treated. And I just wonder if all the fentanyl and all the pot concentrate and whatever, is that all removed? Because I definitely feel like I'm on my last nerve here sometimes. I'm just um, like it. There's something about Denver that's really toxic that I noticed early on. Like when I visited Santa Cruz, like you could feel there was something mellow in the air. Like it was very soothing. And here, I would say it's there's something like evil in the air. But that aside, my point is, if you're a pedestrian, don't just take this. Like it's rare to find a walkable city um, in like a conservative place. It's almost like count antithetical to conservative places, to safer places. For some reason, conservatives are like, yeah, we gotta drive 50 miles to get to anywhere. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's really disappointing. But when you find what seems to be walkable, think about that snow issue, think about that homeless issue, think about the drugs issue, and unfortunately, think about those people riding their scooters and bikes fast as possible. Like when I was in Missoula, Montana, there was this little bridge, this little pedestrian walkway that was like, I don't know, like a foot. Like it was really tight. And people would ride their bikes as fast as possible at you on this tiny little bridge. And they would be offended when you'd say anything. And there was a sign, no riding your bike. And they were just like, and the thing is all that person needs to do is get off their bike and walk it for those 2 minutes. But parents aren't teaching their children impulse control. society isn't teaching. I don't know, like schools aren't teaching impulse control. And maybe those people again are folks that lost their licenses because they have no impulse control, and they still think that they can bully other people on the sidewalk, on tiny little bridges, and get their way. So anyways, you need to take into account that kind of thing. And if there's public transportation, how dangerous is taking the public transportation? Like when I first moved here, this one person was saying, like, don't ever take the 6 bus or another bus. Maybe it was the 20 or 15. She was like, people get stabbed on that bus. And I've taken public transit all my life, and I do not recall people getting assaulted on the bus. It's just like so selfish and so self-destructive, because um, like, yeah, there's just the nature of the criminality here in Denver is like this whole new low. So, and I thought Denver was going to be health conscious and outdoorsy, and maybe it is when you're in your little gated community, but I'm assuming people are living in the hills because the homelessness, it's here. It's big in Denver. There's not affordable housing. Like, the strange thing is so many places where there's housing, I can't find very much for rent, unless it's like 1,500, 2,000, 6,000. Um, but there's all these abandoned buildings, what look like abandoned buildings, like stuff that look like it could be turned into either a day shelter for homelessness, or maybe converted into um, like housing, like affordable housing. But I guess, like, and I'm in like a democratic liberal stronghold here in Denver, but nobody's doing any kind of like housing, cheap housing for low income people or for homeless people. No, they're just going to spend it on illegals that have broken the law, and they're going to spend $30,000 on illegals, like $30,000 each on each of the 7,000 illegals. So there's like 20, almost 20 some $1 million, or $200 million. They're going to spend it on illegals, but they're not going to spend $200 million on your local low income, working entry level working people. You're not going to spend money on your homeless people, your addicted people. So yeah. Um, yeah, and if you know anything, like, have any other ideas of how to assess a city for its safe, like really safe walkability, please put it in the comments. And again, your wind speed, because I had no idea Rapid City had 60-mile-per-hour winds, so that was like really rough. And like, crazy, like, lack of any shade. That's pretty bad. And so now I have like this parasol that this little umbrella kind of thing that I bring with me, and it's not always enough if you're out there a while. So yeah, those are my thoughts about being pedestrian. And everybody's trying to tell me, learn to drive, get a car. And I like, I want to do it if I want to do it. I don't want to be forced into getting a car. Like, walking is good enough. I like to walk. I like hearing the birds. I like seeing a store. I like just seeing the trees. And I just like the slow human scale pace of life. And I don't want to be forced into a vehicle. And I think that's what cities are doing. I think cities are trying to make everybody stop walking, stop being a pedestrian, and go into a car and be in a car. Even though these very same cities are like, cars are killing the planet. Wait, you shouldn't have a car. You know, like, you environmentalists need to get something straight. You need to get your rhetoric straight or your logic straight, because you're not making any sense. You guys are being incredible hypocrites and um, like negligent and irresponsible and just disgusting. Like, I have no respect for environmentalists. Not any of them all. Because if they just bother to look, like, number one, they're the biggest hypocrites. They're the biggest people who are contaminating the planet with the pollution that they think that is wrong. It's just like they have, I don't know, they're really messed up. I used to be one. So yeah, and now there's just enough information out there to realize things are not what you thought. Things are not what you have been programmed with when you were in school and they're showing you the puddle of garbage and the native person crying and stuff. Like, so much of that is a lie. I bet that guy who portrayed the native person probably was not even native. And like the Plains Indians using that having the feathers, that long feather headdress thing, that's actually a fairly new development. It wasn't there for millions or thousands or even hundreds of years. It was like recent, with when um, the founders, the so-called settlers, came. And who knows, even, like, I mean, if you look at a lot of the buildings, like, these were not Native American teepee constructed. Like, there was a lot of ancient history, high tech architecture that existed. And I think that a lot of what have been called Native Americans are part of some remnant that were left after some great reset happened. But I don't think they were here for hundreds of thousands of years. I think they were some sort of remnant that survived, and that there was an ancient, high tech, um, archaeologically advanced culture, because a lot of buildings are much older than just like 100 years or a couple hundred years. And the globalists have been destroying buildings and destroying infrastructure and getting us dependent on dirty electricity and dirty Wi-Fi, when there's probably other um, healthier means. They get us, the globalists get us hooked on dirty medicine that's killing us, and then harming us, and then we're supposed to go to medicine for them to fix the problems that medicine originally created. So, anyways, I think it's good to see what's right in front of your eyes, and learn. And so I just wanted to share this, just the general part about walking, and really assessing how it is. Like, because I've moved a few times, and I'm like, wow, I keep on messing up. Like, just because it has a good walkability score does not mean it is a safe place. If you're near reservations, I wouldn't be, like, anywhere in South Dakota. I would not move to South Dakota. I would not move anywhere where there's a reservation, because there's just some weird thing going on where the native people are aggressive to um, white people. They're mad at us, and of course I'm speaking in broad strokes, but that was a lot of my experience, my 2 years in South Dakota. And so I wouldn't be near um, reservations. And it seems like when the population of when there's like a 9%, because there was 9% Native people in the statistics in Rapid, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that again. Like, there's something about, like, if there's 50% Native people and 50% white people or whatever, I think that'd be fine if there's like 25% Native people. But I think there's something about 9%, and so I would avoid any, like, if there's that amount, I would avoid that. I wonder if that's a good kind of amount to consider about homelessness or poverty. And I would say that maybe for Black people to because here it's weird. It's like there's a lot of black people, but man, they seem kind of mad, and they seem like there's not enough black people. Like, you know, you need to pay attention to me. You need to make me feel good about myself. And I'm like, I'm not here to make anybody feel good about themselves. I don't care if you're Russian or French or, you know, Chinese. Like, I'm not here to make you feel good. And I think some black people are like, yeah, you gotta make me feel good. And I would say some of the new illegals that have come across the border, they're like, look at me, smile at me. And I'm like, no, like, people have some weird fantasy when they see a white lady walking that she's here to do customer service. And maybe when you're going to see your social worker or when you're getting your free money from the city because you're an illegal, okay, like that lady, she's bought off, she's bribed and brainwashed and blackmailed into serving you, but I'm not. Like, so it's really like disturbing to have demands, like, just because, and when you're a pedestrian, it is really a challenge when you're a single woman. I don't know if single men have that issue too, but when you're a lone person and you're older female, I think people want to bully you more. They think they can bully you more. They see like silver gray hair and they're like, oh, get out of my way, garbage. You got to jump out of my way, garbage. And it's really annoying. Or you gotta smile at me, garbage. And I'm here, I'm alive, and I'm not garbage. And whether you're black or illegal or riding a scooter or driving a car recklessly, like, I just want to be able to go across the street. I just want to be able to walk on the sidewalk as it's, sensible. I don't want to have to jump out of my way because you're a crazy drug addict that has no impulse control and the city just lets you threaten me. Like, so, yeah, I think those are factors that really need to be taken into account for walkability. Like, people are like, if they're not driving, they're more on bikes, and so they're part of the problem, as you can see in my video, because a lot of irresponsible bicyclists are riding on the sidewalk and they could care less about the safety of pedestrians. And I've had like I've been like banned on Reddit because I was talking about this. Like, you can just look up people who have been killed or injured by bicyclists riding recklessly on the sidewalk. This happens in New York. And like I told you, I got crashed into 5 different times. I didn't have any permanent injuries, but it was like, what is going on here? So yeah, bicyclists they're a problem too. They're just entitled drivers with the same driving mentality, and yet they're virtue signaling. I'm on a bicycle. I'm part of this bicycle club. Um, so they're not much better than drivers, in my opinion. And maybe there's more cyclists that are being respectful and they're on the road that I'm not taking into account. But anyways, so I know this was a long, drawn out ramble about being a pedestrian, but I think these are important factors to really take into account if you are relocating and you don't want to have to keep relocating, because this is what I have experienced since I left Portland. It's like I've moved from place to place, and I'm like, it's got to be better here. It's got to be better here. And there's just these nuances I wasn't aware of. And so I just wanted to share my experiences in case it might help somebody else who likes to walk and is considering relocating as we enter into these dark times. We've been in dark times, and it's going to get much, much worse, much, much more dangerous. Like, people are losing their minds. Like, during World War II or, whatever, Civil War or whatever, we at least we had organic food. At least we weren't being poisoned by chemtrails and injections and psychological operations quite to the level that we are right now. So we're already like kind of sick and not well, and people have been weaponized against us. Like the homeless are weaponized against the law-abiding pedestrian, solo pedestrian. The scooters are being weaponized against the law-abiding pedestrian. Violent people on the bus, or like all these things are being weaponized against somebody who just wants to walk across the street. There's so many things weaponized against a pedestrian who's just trying to walk to the grocery store, walk to the laundromat, walk to the post office, just because they like to walk. But cities are weaponizing the worst of the dangerous elements of a city, and the city just wants to just torture you. So you want to find where a city is not weaponizing all these things, like weaponize. You're like their cities are weaponizing the lack of snow removal on the sidewalk. They weaponize that against the pedestrian. So they just want to have empty streets. I don't know if they're doing like a major human trafficking thing, satanic ritual abuse when nobody's around, because that's when no I mean, so cities make it dangerous to walk on their sidewalks. So what's going to happen? Nobody's going to walk on that. So they have a ghost town. So cities want to become a ghost town, it seems to me. And so malls are, nobody's going to malls, especially with the lockdowns, and then everybody doing business online. So I think cities just want nobody on the sidewalks, nobody at the mall, nobody at businesses, even though the cities want that, want the property taxes. But I guess cities are maybe getting bribes from the globalists, like they did with the lockdowns. So cities are weaponizing the dangerous, scary things, the hazards. Cities are making themselves hostile to pedestrians. Cities are making themselves hostile towards people who take the bus. And yet they're like, save the planet, you should be healthy, go for a walk. But it's too stressful to do so. So so I'm thinking cities are just wanting people to cities are actually wanting to do a lockdown. They want everything to be locked down. They want you to be at home watching porn, doing drugs, and buying everything on Amazon, and so they can do their satanic ritual abuse everywhere. I'm guessing. I don't know, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that a city would make everything so hostile to their pedestrians, to their locals, to even their tourists. But there we have it. That's what I'm noticing a lot. So what do you guys think? Thanks for watching. God bless.